with a mission to deliver fiscally responsible, highly dependable services to the citizens of our community and the region with integrity and professionalism. This is the City of Albany Commission meeting with Mayor Bo Duro, Mayor Pro Tem John Howard, Ward 1, Matt Fuller, Ward 2, BJ Fletcher, Ward 3, Chad Warbington, Ward 4, Bob Langstaff Jr., Ward 5, Demetrius Young, Ward 6, City Manager Sharon Subadale, City Clerk Sonia Talbot, and City Attorney Nathan Davis. This is the City of Albany Commission meeting.
Coffee with his phone.
Well, we can go ahead and proceed, and when Commissioner Howard gets here, he can just join in. The first item on the agenda is a proposal to reinstitute the invocation at the beginning of the regular commission meetings. Commissioner Warbington, would you like to explain this item?
Yeah, I emailed to all the commissioners and mayor just a simple proposal of kind of how I propose this to work. And I'll just kind of touch on the few things. One is this would be the first item on our Thursday night, our Tuesday night agenda, the last Tuesday of the month. The proposal is for all commissioners and mayor to have a rotation of inviting a faith-based leader or whoever you want to give the invocation. We talked about in terms of time frame for it to be in the 5-minute range, just like a speaker would be in front of us. One of the things, and this is, I guess, where the mayor could weigh in, is my proposal is this would be a positive thing. It wouldn't be a time to come in and be critical or to be political, but it's a way for us to have our faith-based leaders to come in and inspire us, to encourage us, and to unify us as a group. And that's really the intent of the invocation, is just to set the meeting off with a positive tone and inspiration to start with. The clerk, Sonia, and I have talked in terms of, if there were to be we'll kind of have some plan Bs and plan Cs. So if somebody were to not be able to come, or if a commissioner or mayor can't get somebody, Sonia and I talked about kind of having some backup plans to get somebody to fill the spot if something were to happen. So, and I think in there I put starting in May, we'd start with Ward 1 and just rotate through the wards for all the commissioners and mayor to have a turn inviting someone to come give the invocation on their behalf.
Any questions or discussion?
I guess part of my question would be, I'm always going to kind of lean toward being equitable, and just maybe it just feels like if we only allow commissioners to pick homes, then that does not allow for us as a public body to let the public express who they would like to have come give the invocation in terms of representation of the city. Now, I know that opens up another can of worms in terms of who might show up to do the invocation and what that all, may bring in terms of, I guess, religious freedoms and all of that argument. So is there a plan to kind of make that equitable, or are you just gonna leave that to commissioners to just kind of deal with the fallout from who doesn't get picked, who does get picked, and that type of thing?
Well, I think that's a really good point, Commissioner. So just in some of the research I did, that there are some, and this may be an additional item to add to the list of where we might put out something to the community to say, hey, if you're a faith-based leader or a citizen that wants to speak at the invocation, that everybody submit their name or somebody. And so Sonia, our clerk, could keep a list of people interested in speaking in the invocation slot. And then it would be up to us as commissioners when it was our turn to either choose from the list of people or, so that would be, we could do something like you're talking about where we could have some community input to where people could actually volunteer. But it would be up to us as commissioners and mayor to kind of choose who we want to fill that slot. Of course, anybody can sign up to be a public speaker at any meeting to share, an inspiration or a comment or what have you. This would be pretty much just under the lines of invocation. So that I don't know if that would suffice to your concern, but we could certainly put something out to all of our organizations in town to say, if you have a leader that wants to speak or you recommend somebody, we could keep a list of people like that.
Yeah, I guess as my thought is I don't know. I guess I kind of to put that on commissioners, because that kind of, puts us out there in terms of whether or not we're playing favorites or, keeping somebody else from speaking, who may not be representative of the larger faith-based community. And I don't know, just putting that as a responsibility for each commissioner is kind of, I don't know. That's a little kind of concerning to me.
Any other questions or comments? One thing I would say, addressing what Commissioner Young, I would be more inclined to reach out to ask people for an invocation. We all need to be cognizant of the fact, I don't think any member of the commission is a member of St. Teresa's, but Albany has a large Catholic community. We have a member of the commission who is of the Muslim faith. I think that commissioner could be inclined to invite folks, and we probably aware that the Jewish community has not had a full-time rabbi in many years, but that is another option, and it would be my inclination to reach out rather than reach in. And so, but if some commissioners choose to invite someone who's might be less open-minded, I think that's just a risk we have to take, and that's a decision that commissioners are responsible for. But any other discussion? I think this will be on the agenda at the work session later this month for a vote, if I'm correct. Yes, ma'am. Anything else, Commissioner Ward? The next item is a proposal to enter into a contract with Oxford Construction to perform resurfacing of various streets throughout the city. The estimated total expenditure is $6,188,594.35. Ms. Fields, are you speaking to this, or is Mr. Maples or Mr. Rose?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is a proposal to consider the bid that we put out for resurfacing. This is the next round of our resurfacing plan. Bid reference 20-033 was advertised duly. We received 2 bids, and the low bid, which is Oxford Construction, is presented for you today. I'm available, and Mr. Maples and Mr. Rowe are available for questions.
Well, Commissioner Howard?
Ms. Fields,
Yes, sir.
good morning, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
All right, did you say Mr. Stacy is there this morning?
Yes, sir, I'm here. I'm here, Commissioner.
Can you give us a list of all those streets that's gonna be resurfaced that you have?
Yes, sir, I can email them out to you.
Okay,
It's a total of 78 streets on phase 3.
Is it the entire street or just segments of the streets?
We try to go from a major intersection to a major intersection.
Okay.
Mr. Stacy,
Yes, sir.
can you give me mine? You know, I like to do a lot of red tape on mine, so can you just give me a hand deliver mine sometime?
Yes, sir, I'll have it delivered today.
Okay.
Commissioner Fuller, do you have any
Commissioner?
questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, I actually had a couple things. So, Stacy, I know Meadowlark has the plastic speed bumps, and I've got some follow-up that I read last night. Are there any other streets on this whole project that has the speed bumps already in place, or is Meadowlark the only street?
Off the top of my head, Commissioner, I think Meadowlark is the only one that has the speed humps on this list of streets.
Okay. So I guess for me, I've got an issue where we have the plastic speed bumps on Meadowlark. They're condensed into one section, and I understand we went through the process. It followed the ordinance that we had years ago to get the plastic speed bumps. And then those are going to be replaced with concrete speed bumps when they pave the street. My issue is Meadowlark is a long street. It goes all the way to Lake Park Elementary School. Maybe I need to have a side conversation with Bruce and engineering folks. I really just, I don't want to put the concrete speed bumps back where they're at. I believe that they really ought to be spread out on Meadowlark, and I know that doesn't fit within whatever our policy currently is, but there's some work that needs to be done on that for my area.
Anything else?
Yes.
Yeah, so the second issue I had, and I did get some email correspondence, is I do have an issue, and I guess this may be more BJ and Bob, I guess, because Stewart and Whispering Pine both have pretty significant issues that are outstanding. And I understand that the contractor has not been paid for that work. But Stacy, when was Whispering Pines and Stewart actually paved? Was it paved in August of last year, July of last year?
I believe, Commissioner, it was actually paved towards the end of September, first part of October.
Okay. And I know there's reasons why they haven't resolved it. But I guess just from a principle standpoint, I mean, I work in the construction world. I'm never given new work in my line of work when I have issues outstanding on other jobs. And I just kind of I'm struggling with giving new work when there's issues outstanding. And so maybe purchasing or somebody could give me a little more comfort in terms of giving new work of this magnitude when there's still issues that are from the previous job that we had.
Can I weigh in on that, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Sharon. Commissioner, we have had an ongoing dialogue with Oxford about work that we're dissatisfied with. All of that has been documented through the proper process with Yvette. and with engineering and with public works. It's our expectation that that work will all be resolved before we issue a notice to proceed on this particular contract. But our track record with Oxford is, generally very good. We've had issues in the past and they've always made good. But we certainly would not issue the notice to proceed until we're satisfied that they've corrected all of the outstanding issues on the current contract.
Can we get assurance of that?
Certainly, if you want, the clerk can put that on the record, and I can follow it up with an email from Yvette for the record.
Yeah, I think that would be the thing to do, and hopefully Oxford will correct whatever deficiencies there are in the contract. But I certainly think that ought to be addressed before they are awarded another contract. Is that all, Commissioner Corbett?
Yeah, I would just say from a public standpoint, and that's not even in my ward, I get routine comments and questions about those two streets, even as of a couple of weeks ago. So that it is a topic that's in the public. A lot of citizens are talking about it. And, I guess if we do have a process of not to proceed until that's resolved, that is a fairly public issue at the moment.
And they've committed that they would start the milling work by the end of this week. And so I'm very confident that they'll get it finished, but in accordance with your direction, we won't issue the new contract until we're satisfied that the corrections are made.
That's certainly my feeling. And the other thing is they're not going to submit a change order for these corrections, are they?
We had to do somewhat of a change order, partly because we required them to put down extra, what I call filler base on this road when they mill it, but they're not charging us to remove the millings and to replace the milling.
Well, I've seen that happen years past where somebody gets a contract with a low bid and after all the change orders are awarded, they were no longer the low bid. But I just want to make sure that, particularly if something was deficient in the performance of the work, that they're not paid to correct their own oversight.
How much is the change order going to be?
Just to give you some perspective, what we've paid on this contract is $4.9 million so far. The original bid was over $6 million, so we're actually running under about $750,000 on phase 2. So Yvette's on the phone, so she can speak to, I think, the additional leveling for Whispering Pines and Stewart is $152,000.
That's correct.
When all is said and done on this contract, we expect it to be $5.59 million. The original purchase order was $6.4 million.
So when these are approved, is it not a lump sum, or is it kind of
No.
credits, add-ons as they go through, or?
No, it's not a lump sum. It's a time and material contract. And of course, we estimate kind of worst case scenario with curb and gutter, with every manhole that has to be lowered and raised. And so generally our estimates are on the high side, but the actual work is based on actual cost of time and material. So even with this contract that we're awarding, we're essentially looking at worst case scenario, but what happens in reality is totally based on time and material. So generally we end up being under contract, under budget.
This is Matt. To confirm the new bid that we're discussing this morning, did that include the leveling process that was not done on Stewart and Whispering Pines?
It did. In the past, because we were so, I guess, limited on funds, we did not routinely do the type of leveling that we really ought to do when we mill these roads. And I mean, you've all seen it. When they mill the road all the way down, the surface looks like the crater of the moon. You know, it's very, very uneven. And in the past, we've approved them to do a minimum amount of leveling. But that does not give us overall our best outcome. And so we've instituted a new process where every street will be evaluated for leveling, and the amount of leveling will have to be approved by engineering before they're allowed to move forward. And admittedly, on this last contract, they had some supervisory issues. They had a change of their senior people who had been on the job for a very long time. And so they've written us and assured us that they will correct those deficiencies going forward.
Commissioner Langstaff, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Young?
No, sir.
Ms. Field, I see in these other items we have on the agenda today, it talks about, contractors were directly solicited, but we don't have that on this situation. Explain that for me, please, ma'am.
That's just a matter of how we write it. These contractors were directly solicited, as well as the bid was placed on GPR and in the paper and all our normal routes. But the contractors directly solicited just means we actually sent them directly an email. We still
Okay.
advertise everywhere else.
Right, I understand, I just didn't, so directly solicited, it means that you, in addition to publicly advertising the bid, you send the documents directly to a given contractor.
That's correct. We actually sent it directly to 4 contractors.
Okay. Who are the other 2?
Jim Boyd Construction and Hatcher Tractor Service.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Sudan, and the funding, it looks like $2.5 million is coming from SPLOST 7, and a little bit better than $2 million is coming from the T-SPLOST. Why'd you divide it that way, if I can ask you?
We created a plan several years ago, and then when T-SPLOST passed, we updated that plan. And so incrementally, every year, we use the 3 different funding sources for the resurfacing. This has allowed us to increase the number of streets that we pave every year, consistent with what we promised we would do in T-SPLOST, and consistent with what we promised we would do in SPLOST. So several years ago, the board adopted a 6-year plan for street resurfacing and outlined how the funds would be used on an annual basis.
Okay, my problem with that is I have said time and time again, with this SPLOST 7 allocation for roads, I want that to be reallocated to recreation and for improvements at Cheehaw Park and maybe other issues. So if we got a 6-year plan that's calling for us to take money out of SPLOST 7, I want to revisit that, because I strongly feel with the enactment of T-SPLOST, that's where the primary fund for road improvement should be coming from, and this money that's in SPLOST 7 should be utilized for other purposes. And that's not my decision, I understand, but I would like the commission to weigh in on that before we get too far down that road. And I certainly am not obligated to a decision that the prior commission was made or has made. So I would like that to come up as an item, so we could, sir? Yeah. But with that, I guess this will be on the agenda at the April 28th meeting. Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Young, did I? Okay, thank you.
Can I
Next item,
just
Madam
weigh
Clerk.
in?
Yes, ma'am.
Just one thing on the SPLOST 7 referendum, we were very specific with, and the project list was very specific with road improvements. I do recognize this board can reallocate funding, and I do have some other ideas on ways you can reallocate funding without it depleting the road resurfacing. I do think that that was a hot button item for both SPLOST and T-SPLOST. And we certainly can bring you back some ideas on funding for recreation. And we will do that in the budget workshop that we have scheduled for recreation, which will be coming up soon.
Okay, my point though, Madam City Manager, is that, you know, this board needs to make that decision. And, we have a legal opinion on reallocating the funds, so we're certainly not constrained from making that decision if the majority wants to make that decision. And, as I said, we got $50 million in T-SPLOST that was not anticipated when you made that commitment of funds from, SPLOST 7. So we just need to put that on the agenda and address it at that time.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Next item, Madam Clerk.
That is public works, crew quarters with WJ Kersey Construction, total expenditure of $788,900.
And who's going to speak on this item? Ms. Fields, Mr. Gray, Mr. Rowe, or one or all?
I'll begin.
Okay.
This item is to contract with WJ Kirksey Construction to construct the Public Works crew quarters for an expenditure of, it's a lump sum expenditure of $788,900. All was advertised as usual, and we received 4 bids. Mr. Kirksey has performed for us in the past, and we're recommending approval.
Did Mr. Gray or Mr. Rowe have any comments?
This is Don Gray. I'm here with our designated project manager, if approved, Mr. Chad Arnold. We're just here for questions, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. Okay, can we start with Commissioner Young this time? Any questions, Commissioner Young?
These are crew quarters for employees, and where is this to be located at?
I can answer that. Yes, ma'am. We have 145 full-time employees, and this is the crew quarters for the 3 divisions, street, solid waste, and sewer. And it'll be housed right behind the city clinic in that parking area immediately to the north of the clinic.
That was it.
Oh, is that on Jefferson? It says right here it's on North Monroe. I thought it was going to be out by the Public Works.
Yes, sir. It's on Monroe, where the city clinic is, right next door to the main Public Works building. That where the city clinic's located now, just to the north of the clinic, that crushed asphalt parking lot that's right there now. That's where this will be constructed.
Okay, I'm speaking out of turn. Do you have any other questions, Commissioner? Commissioner Langstaff?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yeah, my only input is we're in the middle of coronavirus crisis. So just like all of us in our personal lives and businesses, we're all making really tough decisions to delay, not to. My question, just in terms of, I guess, leadership, city staff, is this something that can wait until we truly get a handle on the coronavirus and how much the city's going to be financially impacted, or is this something that we feel like we got to commit the funds today for, or whenever we vote on this at a later date? I just think it's prudent to have those discussions. Just like in anything in a crisis like this, is this urgent to do this month?
Is that all?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh.
City staff wants to.
Any response?
I guess I can say that we are closely monitoring and evaluating our financial status. This administration has been criticized for accumulating reserves. This is why you accumulate reserves. I think we are positioned to face the crisis. It's going to be hard for us to know exactly what the fallout is going to be, but Derek and I have been kind of a step ahead looking at what we expect, the things we know are going to hit us. Of course, there'll be some unknowns, which will take a little while for us to anticipate what those unknowns are. At this juncture, I feel like we are well positioned to be able to handle this expenditure. We are being very judicious in our budget preparation, and there will be belt tightening. But I believe that this is an expenditure that's well worth the investment in our employees.
Is that all?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fuller, do you have any questions?
Yes, I would just, if we could get a copy of the full scope of work that's going to be done before we vote on this.
Yes, sir, I can make that happen.
We
Any
also,
other-
we emailed out to the whole commission a full set of the architectural plans in response to Commissioner Warbington's request, along with the bid. That was sent out to you yesterday. It was late yesterday.
Okay. Okay, I haven't seen it, but I will look for it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all, Commissioner Fuller?
Yes, sir, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Howard?
No comment.
No comment. Okay. I just had some questions. The quarters y'all are using now, Mr. Rowe, have been there for a long, long time, I assume, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, we constructed those crew quarters ourselves. Employees did back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. All right. What I need to do is to get with you or somebody in Public Works, just like we did with these fire trucks. I mean, maybe this is a issue that's been going on prior to me coming on board, but I really, it's a lot of money, and I need to know. I'm looking here, the cost will be shared by stormwater, sewer, and solid waste. So I assume we're counting on paying this money out of fees that the public pays. Is that correct, Madam City Manager?
Yes, sir. It's accumulated. It's accumulated funds that we have in these funds. So yes, ultimately
Okay.
everything we have is based on revenue received from the public.
Okay, well, yeah, but I mean, this is different than SPLOST money is my point there. And what I need to do, Mr. Rowe, is to get with you or somebody, Colonel Gray or whoever, and I would like to see, Mr. Warbington told me the crew quarters are in a deplorable condition. So I understand something needs to be done, and I want our workers to understand that we appreciate them. But on the other hand, when the public's complaining about their utility rates and folks at the coffee shop start saying, well, they spent $800,000 for the guys to have a break room, I want to be able to explain why this expense was justified. So if somebody would get in touch with me and tell me when I can come down there and meet with y'all, I personally would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'll make myself available around your schedule, sir.
Okay, well, if we could do it Saturday, that'd be great.
Okay. Do you have a time?
No, the city clerk says she can set that up. And if any other
Okay.
commissioner wants to join us, they're welcome. Any other discussion on that item? Okay, move on. Next agenda item, Madam Clerk.
That is variable fee workstation, and it's the Benson Construction Company from Sisters for a total, expenditure of $237,126.
Okay, Ms. Fields, are you gonna speak on this topic as well, or are you gonna let somebody else have a chance?
I was gonna speak, but somebody else can have a chance after I'm done.
Okay, go ahead.
We can, this is to consider for approval a contract with Benson Construction. This item, again, was advertised. We only received one bid. There's an issue at the golf course. This is a, pressing item that we need to go on and get done. That's why it was put on for decision. Contract time for this project is 90 calendar days, and we recommend award.
Okay. Did Mr. Holmes or Ms. Gray have any comments?
I'll defer to Mr. Holmes, sir, and I believe he has another technical expert on the line also.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, this is Joel Holmes. I'm here and I have staff with me. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
Good morning, Ms. Holmes. Okay, so we'll start with Commissioner Howard. Ms. Yvette.
Yes, sir.
Have we ever used Benson Construction out of Tilton before?
No, sir, we have not.
Okay, so you don't know nothing about their performance, outlook, do you?
We have checked references, but firsthand, no, we don't have any experience with them.
So how did the reference check out?
References appeared to be good.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Christopher Fuller, do you have questions?
I guess I would ask, and I've seen some emails that have touched on this, but is there, and I know the summer hot, we've got summer coming up, and so the idea of being able to water the course is imperative, but is there a fix or a repair? I know parts I read were harder to get, but is there a repair that could get us through this summer and get past this current time, then we could pick this back up maybe in the fall?
Yeah, Commissioner Fuller, this is Joel Holmes. The pump is actually down now, but we're in the process of getting basically a temporary fix on it to get it fixed best we can in hopes of keeping it running until we get this new system if approved in. So it is imperative. I mean, we're in bad shape with the watering right now.
And so that fix that's in the process now, is that something that could last us through the summer, or is that something that would just buy you a matter of weeks?
It's definitely a temporary fix. It's basically we're patching it the best we can to try to get it through, but we don't have any expectation that it would last through the summer. I mean, of course we don't know, but the reason we're asking this new pump is because we continuously have issues with the pump and repairs. It's just hard to keep it going with it being the company doesn't make this pump anymore. Like you mentioned, it's hard to get parts. We're having to improvise with parts just to keep it going. So we're going to get it patched up and do the best we can with it and use it only when we have to and hope to get a lot of rain in the meantime.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, yesterday Joel and Derek and Craig, I went and visited with them yesterday, and I really appreciate them spending time. I would liken this scenario as we're riding a bicycle when we really ought to be riding in a car. I mean, what they got out there is they're manually having to do a bunch of stuff. They're having to drag hoses, get temporary pumps. I mean, it's, on one hand, yeah, they could extend it another 6 months, because I agree with Commissioner Fuller. Anytime we can delay something with our current scenario, but I believe they're having to do so much. They're having to stand on their head on one foot with just all kind of manual things they're having to do just to keep the grass alive. And if we let these greens go and let the grass die, we'll have a lot more repair work to do later. And so you know, anytime you have something like this go down, it's imperative that they get this going back, in my opinion. One question I had, you know, I haven't looked at the golf course budget, but staff has really done a great job out there. I mean, I've heard a lot of positives about the greens and the grass and the condition of the course. And so I think folks are really doing a good job out there. I don't know where we stand. You know, should something like this ultimately be paid for by fees? I don't know, you know, profitability wise, fees paid versus expenses out there. That's the only long-term question I would have is investing this kind of money. We're really going to have a first-rate, nice irrigation system when this is, hopefully it's going to just continue to make the course better. So maybe that discussion we need to have at a later date. Maybe when we look at the budget next year, is if we are making large investments out there, should our fees reflect that? I know I'll get a bunch of emails from golf players, I guess, from making that comment. You know, it is tax dollars versus fee dollars. I mean, we got to make the golf course but balance at the end of the day.
We can add that to the recreation workshop, Commissioner Wilmington.
Okay. Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing from me.
Commissioner Young?
No comment.
Okay, I had a few questions. So this pump, and I'm showing my ignorance here, basically this is a pump that's running the irrigation system for all 18 holes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how long has the pump you have now, how long has that been out there?
25, 30 years.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So does this pump, what kind of warranty does it come with, please?
It's 6 years, and that's
6
on
years.
labor parts, everything.
Okay. All right. And down here it says this is a budgeted expenditure. I thought when something's a budgeted expenditure, that means it's in the budget and you plan on spending that money during the fiscal year. Is that right or wrong?
That is correct, sir. We knew this pump was on its last leg. So as part of our R3M budget, we had these upgrades for the golf course.
Okay, how much do you allocate?
For the golf course in its entirety, I think Derek is on the phone. I think we budgeted a little bit over $300,000 for the golf.
Okay.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
how much of this 237,126 is available in the budget?
That would be a Derek question. I believe most of it, Derek Brown. But I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
If you need it right away, we'll have it by the regular meeting.
If you can just get it to me, I mean, I see where I'm going with this, but I would like to know of the 300,000, how much has been spent, so that could tell us. Okay, and then the other thing, I asked for this information and was provided, I think even before I was sworn in, the cost of running the golf course and the revenue generated out there. We got a lot of good citizens that play golf out there, a lot of retired military folks. When I was on the commission before, there was the suggestion that we raise fees, and it was it was like an insurrection. We had folks coming, but I think this is something we need to look at in the budget process, and certainly don't think we need to charge what a private course pays, but we got a small segment of the population that uses the golf course, and I think they should, Mr. Warburton said it should pay for itself. I think when you look at the numbers, any municipal golf courses, I mean, most municipal golf courses are going to be subsidized, and I think just what I'd like to do is shift a little more of the expense to the folks who are playing golf. I think that's only fair, but we certainly need to look at that during the budget process.
Yes, sir, and we'll add that to the budget workshop.
Okay, if Ms. Zubadan, if y'all could get that email that was provided to me, I think we have the, revenue and expenses from the golf course, and I think that would be instructive for the commissioners as well.
Yes, sir, we'll share it.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, one other follow-up, it might be Joel or Sharon. In my tour out there are gonna be some other costs associated with this project, so I don't know if we could just put a rough number. I think they're gonna put a roll-up door, there's gotta be a wall taken out, some other, they could, just with my rough knowledge of construction, that could add up to $10,000 to $20,000 pretty quickly when you start modifying a building, putting roll-up doors. It might be good just to have a rough number of what else has gotta be done other than this lump sum bid here.
We can do that. And I just got a text message from Derek Brown. Of the 300,000 budgeted, we've expended only $10,000 so far.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Commissioner Warvington, this is Don Gray. As far as the work you mentioned, as far as the building and the roll-up door, we've received 2 proposals. The lowest one, a lump sum of about $8K to remove those hollow metal doors, prep for install new metal doors, and we've started working through that with procurement to make sure we've followed all the rules and put it out correctly.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, Madam Clerk, the next item, please, ma'am.
That is Transportation Alternative Program or the TIP-TAP grant.
Is Ms. Gaskins speaking to this, please?
Good morning. How are you guys this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. I am presenting to you this morning information about our Transportation Alternative Program through the Georgia Department of Transportation. We actually submitted an application to include construction, preliminary engineering, and design. The initial project was submitted for a little bit over $5 million. What the Georgia Department of Transportation approved in this phase of the grant includes preliminary design and preliminary engineering and design. The actual award was a total of $850,000. The federal contribution amount is $680,000, and the local contribution is $170,000. We're asking this morning, we're providing the information for review and for information, and it will be on the next meeting at the latter part of this month for your consideration as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gaskins. Mr. Young, do you have any questions?
Is this particular project a part of what we're already doing, with, I guess, trying to connect this, the trail? I think this is the sidewalk project, right?
Right. This project is not a trails project. The trails project, of course, absolutely complements this project. This project specifically is for streetscape improvements and sidewalk improvements for 7 areas. I think I emailed everybody a copy of the actual grant application, and you saw those 7 areas that we're actually focusing on.
That's it.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner
You're
Langstaff?
welcome.
No question.
Commissioner Warvington?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand, what are we actually approving here? Are we approving that we're accepting the grant? Are we approving, like, what are?
That is correct. In order for us to be able to receive the $680,000, we have to have something in writing accepting the grant for the preliminary engineering and the design work. That is correct.
Okay, and then I guess once we accept it, then we will go out and solicit bids for the design work?
That is correct. We will have to follow the Georgia Department of Transportation procurement process, which includes publicizing the proposals or the bid. And yes, sir, we will actually submit the information on all of the outlets to make sure that it's properly advertised. And we will certainly, at that point, receive proposals from those eligible vendors.
What is the deadline? When do we have to let them know? Is there a deadline?
There is. We had a conference call with them last Thursday, And of course, they wanted us to move forward at that time. And of course, we told them we could not do anything until we actually got the approval from the mayor and commission. So they're waiting. Right now, everything is kind of stalled until we actually give them the acknowledgement that we're going to accept it. They understand that we're meeting this morning and that we might not have an actual answer for them until the next meeting, but they're looking forward for us providing information to them this month.
So there's no official date that if we don't accept by May 1st, we lose the grant. Is kind of subjective right now.
That is correct. I can confirm if there is a specific deadline that we need to adhere to, but one has not been shared as relates to that. They are under the understanding that hopefully we'll have an answer from them this month, but they've not given us a May deadline or anything of that sort.
So I guess my input is that even though this is $850,000, we're actually really talking about $5 million. So I guess by us accepting this grant, it actually is going to lead us to do the larger grant later down the road. So I guess for me, it's almost more of a consideration of the entire scope, and we're just kind of, it looks like they're doing it in phases. I understand that. So we're just really trying to get the first phase going. But this overall, on one hand, is very positive. I mean, it's $5 million. A good part of it is grant. But on the other hand, there is a good portion that's going to come from the city. And I would like to understand where does that fit in? I assume SPLOST 7 was approved before this grant came available. And so are we looking at using all SPLOST 7 funds on this project? And it's kind of like, I guess, is this going to supersede any other projects that we've been talking about for streetscape sidewalks, that all of a sudden now this is the number one or the number two priority and everything else kind of gets kicked down the priority list? You see what I'm saying? So I think there's a lot to talk about with the overall $5 million project, with all the other stuff that we planned for the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years with SPLOST 7, and how does it fit in with everything, and does it just automatically get moved up the priority list?
Sure, and I think Derek's on the line to be able to talk about the specific funding source, but I will say that whenever we pursued the application, there were SPLOST funds already allocated for sidewalk improvements. So what we did, we don't think this is going to take the place of another project or take priority over anything that's already on the prioritized list. We think this is going to complement those projects, because what it allows us to do is maximize our dollars so that we can do more with federal funds to match up with our local funds. So actually, when we actually applied for the grant, we looked at these other options to see what's on the table, how can we actually cover more space with more dollars. And this grant allows us to do just that. It allows us to do what was already on the prioritized list, and it also allows us to do more footage. As I said, there are 7 spaces that we have identified to be able to maximize our dollars. And if Derek Brown is on the line, he can talk about exactly which pots of funds those are coming out of.
Yes, good morning, everyone. As Lucretia mentioned, we do have sidewalk funding, and specifically some downtown and sidewalk improvement funds set aside in SPLOST 7 and T-SPLOST, and even a little bit left in SPLOST 6. And so that combined total of about 1.7 that we were identified in those 3 funding sources, basically, when combined with the potential grant, becomes about $5.2 million. And so basically, the money that has already been set aside or identified for a project such as this has basically been almost tripled by being able to secure this grant, even if you look at it in totality at the $5.2 million. So, but we did identify approximately 1.7 in our 3 funding sources that were specific to downtown sidewalk, streetscape type of improvements.
So with the 5.2, our share will be 1.7 of the ultimate project.
From our initial discussions, that's when we initially submitted that grant application, that would have been our matching amount would have been in the neighborhood of about 1.4 in totality. So we had about 1.7 identified, but the matching piece for that 5.2 would be about 1.9.
And commissioners, this is not instead of our sidewalk program. This is funding that we identified for downtown improvement.
Anything else? Commissioner Fuller, you have any questions?
No, sir.
All right, Commissioner Howard? Okay, I saw this and Ms. Gaskins provided me with some drawings. I mean, they've had some proposals. I think we're all gonna be cautious in the years to come. We get these consultants, they generate these plans and none of the plans come to fruition. But I can remember in the days of ATI, there were proposals and in the plans that the sidewalks downtown were going to be a different kind of a surface. And it's supposed to look like the water flow, and it was different colors, light green, light blue, yellow. It was really pretty. But of course, when the numbers came back, everybody got sticker shock and the sidewalks downtown were replaced. In retrospect, it might have been the best thing to do if you're gonna make downtown a distinctive area, and particularly if you're gonna attract tourists. I mean, you need to have something different than run-of-the-mill sidewalks, and that's what we have. In some of those plans, I see this, but I really believe this is something we need to pursue, and I won't, certainly Ms. Gaskins or staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but what we have here is the potential to get about 75% federal funding to pay for these improved sidewalks. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's actually a total of 80%. That is correct. The federal contribution equates to 80%. We actually are able to, as I said earlier, maximize the dollars in terms of what we had initially locally to be able to spread the project area.
Okay. And so really what we're doing is we're getting the improved sidewalks for 20% of what the costs are as regards to local funding.
Correct.
Okay, and now as I understand this process, before we are eligible for construction dollars, there has to be this engineering and design.
That is correct. The Georgia Department of Transportation, they've changed their process a little bit. They want to actually fund projects which have been engineered and designed. So what they did for this particular project, they actually awarded us the funds, but they only awarded the funds for the preliminary engineering and design component. And we anticipate this will take about 18 to 24 months to get through that entire project. And that's an estimated time span. And when that time span is complete, we will then go back and apply for grant funds to actually construct what has been engineered and what includes the preliminary engineering and design component as well.
Okay. Well,
may I add something?
Yes, ma'am.
The other part to that is during the engineering and design process, there's considerable public input. This commission will have the opportunity to opine on the final design as well. Correct.
Thank you. And certainly want to commend Ms. Gaskins and her staff for securing these funds. Anything else? Madam Clerk, does somebody wish to speak? Madam Clerk, the next item.
The next item will be the budget workshop for public safety.
Okay, Ms. Subadan.
Good morning again. This will be the first time that we are using this format, and it is to present the budget, pieces of the budget that are important or that I deem are important to you before we actually submit the budget. We want you to get a sense of where we are in the planning. The budget is actually balanced for 2021, based on what we believe are your priorities. But we wanted to give you, if you will, a sneak peek on some distinctive areas ahead of time, so that if you have a different direction for us, or if you have questions, we're able to address that in sort of bite-sized pieces before we present the overall budget, which Derek's going to go over the budget timeline. It is a big budget with a lot of line items, so we're trying to see if we can break it down into subject matter areas to just ensure that our understanding of your priorities and your expectations is accurate before we present the budget in May.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Howard, do you have
Ms. Superman,
Yes, sir.
on page 23, where it said you got 1 through 3, and you said police recruitment, well, with a 6% increase in salary for police and personnel.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Howard, could you repeat that for me?
Where it said police recruitment on page 23.
Yes, sir. I have the police chief on, and he's prepared to speak as well. So do you want to have him go ahead and share kind of his perspective?
Right, on 1 and 3, where it said code enforcement, those two, can he explain that?
Absolutely. Chief, you're on. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioner.
Good morning.
Commissioner, yes, based on the results of the retreat, one of the items that we discussed was the police recruitment and about a salary increase. The city researched 6 regional police departments, including Valdosta, Thomasville, Columbus, and Macon. The average minimum salaries for the position of officer, corporal, and sergeant were used to calculate the approximate 6% difference. The result of a 6% increase for policing positions led to an increase in personnel costs of over $717,000. Derek Brown and his staff came up with a listing, and basically this will allow us to have a higher starting salary, which can be a better recruitment tool for police officers as we're competing with everyone in Georgia, North Florida, and then also in East Alabama. In reference to number 3 about code enforcement, what we want to do is increase the personnel in code enforcement so they can have a more proactive effort with the 2 additional inspectors. And also we want to look at, based on we've gotten just comment from the community about how we can better do some mitigation prior to any types of demolishing to where people can do rehabs. We are looking at expanding it to have the capability to work with these various nonprofit or even private citizens on ways that we can help people with the rehab and the revitalization before we get to the point of the property becoming in legal state to where it eventually becomes a demolition.
Chief, why is that, where it says 6% increase, that for new recruits are all foreign officers?
That would be, and I'm gonna ask Derek if he can help me with the numbers, but you're talking about a 6% increase for all personnel. And it's primarily affecting our patrolmen, corporal, and sergeant ranks.
Okay, and on 3 again, where it said code enforcement, you got adding a major and 2 additional inspectors. What?
Yes, sir.
Why you need a major to take that responsibility?
What it is, there'll be a grade 11 position, and this person primarily will be the one who can work with these nonprofit groups and individuals, kind of we're looking at several models of other code enforcement entities from across the country, and we're trying to find the best fit for Albany to where we can easily kind of combine all of the requests from the community and more so work into how does this person, if we got the enforcement arm on this end, how can this person help these other people who want to do the revitalization with that? That's what we're looking at. It's something new, and we want to see we just want to try something that can be a little bit different and to where we can do more, help with more revitalization. And we'll continue to do our demolitions, but where there can be revitalization done, we want to do that.
Yeah, but Chief, I have some concern that you would would like to see a major be some other legwork other than in code enforcement. If you can get a lieutenant and a captain to oversee that department.
Well, sir, because code enforcement it's becoming a larger department. I already have majors who are assigned to my investigators, uniform, and support services. This is just giving a little bit more authority to this person. We are recognizing that as we move forward, this is more than just a police department effort, to where we have to work more with planning and engineering, not as we're going forward. So this is a grade 11 position, and I'm not saying that this is going to be a sworn position. This can be a non-sworn person because it's a certain skill set that we'll be looking for in this person to help us as we grow the unit moving forward.
Ms. Subin, I'm gonna let you know from that I think that this probably need to go back and do some more tweaking of it, which I'm not gonna say my colleagues would go along with me, but I think that a captain or lieutenant could do the same thing, rather than you adding a major to that position. And the reason why is that you need more officers in the streets, and especially a lot of these hotspots in the community. So I'm concerned that we are going to use some officers that they should be sworn officers and out beat the ground where crimes are occurred.
But Commissioner, yes, sir, I understand your concern, but this one position is, like I said, it may not be a sworn person. It can be a non-sworn person with this. When you're talking about boots on the ground, that's where we need in the recruitment part of it, because we do need that lower to mid-level ranks. That's the personnel that we need out here on the street. With the 2 additional inspectors, that can also help with right now the code enforcement unit is basically, they're doing a lot of catch-up work. So when you have the 2 additional inspectors, this can also help them while the current unit is doing the catch-up work. Then how can these 2 additional inspectors go out and do some proactivity? Understanding that we're not taking away from law enforcement by no means. What we can do is add, this is really, code enforcement is a force multiplier to law enforcement, because if we're able to head off some of these potential problems that we're seeing, such as if we're able to fully engage with these property owners and get them to maintain their properties better than some of these hotspots, we can probably reduce the type of activity if the property owners become more actively involved in property. We're trying to not take away, but we're trying to add to the capabilities of the law enforcement community. But I do understand your concern, sir.
And Ms. Superintendent, back to you again, where you said bullet point number 1, and that is a 6% increase for all new officers and return and officers already there, right?
Yes, sir. It's for sworn personnel, those who are engaged in policing. And on the code enforcement piece, just to add to what the chief is saying, we walked away from the retreat very aware that the issues of blight and code enforcement were extremely important to this board. And we're really looking at a better way of implementing the program. And in order to do that, we need additional resources at every level. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We have to change the way that we manage the code enforcement unit. We have to change the way we attack the issues of blight in our community. I think the being 100% proactive is extremely important for us. And we really need a new direction. We need a solid vision for how we deal with blight and code enforcement in our community. And we think that new leadership is going to help us. This does not replace the people who are there. This adds to the chief's capability to deal with this issue of blight. But, you know, when we look at other models and we examine what we have and what our deficiencies are, we believe this is what's necessary to give you the result that you seek.
Well, Sue, you know, up front, I think that this concept is good, but in reality, they probably need to go back and do some more tweaking and some fine tune before I can make an intelligent vote when we get into the budget process. And let me ask you another question, Superintendent. So we're talking about this police recruitment is 6% increase. I don't want to sidetrack, but that would be for all foreign officers. What would have you to the budget is complete? What would be a COLA for all city employees?
We use the CPI, and we've incorporated a 2.3% COLA for the remainder of city employees.
A 2.3?
Yes, sir.
For all city employees. You couldn't just round that off 3%?
With 1,100 employees, rounding becomes a very expensive proposition. If this board desires for us to do that, we will go back and rework it. We were able to balance the budget with this increase for police and with the CPI for other city employees. But that's the purpose of having these budget workshops. If as a board, your consensus is that we need to do 3%, we would go back to the drawing board and rework it. But a cost of living based on the CPI right now is 2.3%.
When would Derek, can he go back and do it sometime this week and let us know?
If that's the consensus, we will do that.
Well, I mean, let's just have options. One thing I was thinking is, you know, I believe that what we ought to do is be as generous as we can with the rank and file folks, and I feel like we need to exclude anybody that's making $90,000 a year or more from the cost of living adjustment. And for instance, if we could see if everybody under $90,000 a year got a 2.5% raise, I'd like to see that number.
2.5 versus 2.3?
Yes, ma'am, but that's excluding people make $90,000 or more don't get a raise.
Sure. I will tell you, we'll absolutely do that. You'll probably be surprised at the numbers, but we'll go ahead and get that for you. Are there any other suggestions on the table?
Okay.
Any other suggestions?
That's it.
Can we just let the commissioners, if they have a suggestion when it gets their turn?
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Fuller?
No comments at this time.
Mr. Warburton?
Yeah, I got a few things. Chief, the 6% increase you're proposing, does that get us even with our neighboring police forces, or does that get us higher than them? I mean, I know it's kind of a round number, but what does that 6% do for our numbers?
Derek, I'm gonna need your help with the numbers, but I can't tell you Commissioner, from the preliminary numbers, it gets us higher than their base salary. But even with that, departments do have flexibilities. They don't always have to start their personnel out at their base level step. They can start them out at a higher step. For example, if I hire somebody who is post-certified, I don't start them out at the base step. I may start them out at step 2 or step 3. So, but this should put us at the higher level compared to the surrounding agencies in our within the Southwest Georgia area.
All right, so I guess my input would be is that I want to be able to say that Albany police officers make more than Valdosta police officers, make more than Columbus, you know, so whatever that number is, if it needs to be 7%, you know, taking this kind of money, we need to be higher than. We need to be able to communicate as leaders that we are paying our folks the highest in the region. That would be my input to that number.
Yes, sir.
So code enforcement, I'm definitely in agreement that we need more code enforcement. My input to that, and I know this is more the programming versus the staffing, is I want code enforcement to be proactive versus reactive. And I understand it's been a matter of staffing, but you know, my ideal would be when I get a call from a citizen that says, hey, this such and such property, and when I call code enforcement, I would love for them to say, oh, we're already on it. We've already, you know, through our inspections, through our routes, routines, we're already on step 3 versus waiting on a citizen phone call or a 311 call. So hopefully with this additional staffing, maybe we can start transitioning to proactive versus reactive code enforcement.
Yes, sir.
My next question is, I didn't see anywhere in here, and I think this is really a budget item, is the school zone speed initiative. I know that we don't do it for revenue, but there is revenue that will come from it, and that can offset some of these things. So are we still looking at doing the speed in the school zone, speed monitoring?
Yes, sir. Red speed. The good thing about it is zero cost to the city. Until this virus hit, we were planning to have them come and do a presentation. I will get in touch with my contact with Red Speed, and we are looking forward to move forward with that project. What I can do, sir, is there's a synopsis that they've done for Albany, Georgia. I can have him update it, and we can provide that to all commissioners and the mayor.
And so I don't know, is that something we're going to plan in the budget, or we're just going to plan a zero in the budget and it would be a positive for?
It'll be zero cost to the city, sir. They are put in all equipment, and this only thing we have to we don't have to provide anything cost-wise to them. They'll do all the training for our personnel on our existing systems.
Right, and I was speaking of revenue too. Would we plan on zero revenue, or?
Oh, well, we don't budget revenue for general fund departments in the budget, but it would be part of our revenue. We would be very conservative in the first year, and it would be a restricted revenue. There's only certain things you can do with the funds. So, but it would not show up in the department.
Yeah, I think that's part of the legislation, is it has to be used for law enforcement. So again, it could help offset some of these costs. My last thing from our retreat, I was just looking through our minutes. One of the big items we talked about was extended stay hotels. I don't know if that would fall under this code enforcement line item, but I truly believe that the more we, I don't know if invest is the word to use, or the more resources we put towards our extended stay hotel problem, I think we'll see improvements. So I don't know, is there an increased work in that? Is that included in these 2 additional code enforcement officers, or how would that be handled?
That was my expectation. That was my expectation of the chief. We know this is a hot button issue, but for this current crisis, we would have probably started working on that. But we also realize it's not a one and done. This is something that we're almost going to have somebody stay on full time, making sure they don't backslide once some cleanup is done. So it's definitely on the list of proactive things that we need to do in the area of code enforcement. But as I said before, there's a certain amount of leadership necessary for us to really move the agenda forward to a proactive stance.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Young?
I just want to ask, was there any specific outcomes to the pay raises that have been identified? What are the staffing levels we're trying to achieve? And also, in light of what Commissioner Worthington mentioned, I guess, in the second question, what is, I guess, the overall plan in terms of, you know, what specific things that are code enforcement, what are we trying to tackle? We talked about different ways to approach that at the retreat, whether or not we took one segment of the community at a time to kind of, you know, give people a heads up that they might go ahead and clean up before we got there. Things like that, is that included in this particular plan?
As we look at it, Commissioner, in the past, we have done that with the Fight Albany Blight initiative. With the proactive efforts with it, instead of doing it kind of piece by piece, we really do need to map out the city as a whole. And once we map out the city as a whole, then at that point, we can now prioritize what are some things that's easier to fix compared to this will take a while. Once we've identified those areas, then there have been recommendations from community members of how we can better engage with the community. We do want to take those recommendations and put them to use. So that there's, so instead of, and I understand one day you show up, this property's been sitting there blighted for maybe several years, several months. All of a sudden the bulldozers show up and people say, hey, what could have been done? We do want to take all of that into account. There are people we've had communications with in the community with this proactive effort, bringing them aboard. That is part of the plan. The other part is listen to the first part you said about the personnel. The goal is to get up to our authorized strength of 214. And earlier I said up to sergeant, but really up to my lieutenants also and my captains. But between those boots on the ground, that we do want to make sure that we have a good sufficient amount of personnel who will be answering the calls of service, who can fill the ranks within our specialized units such as investigations, gang unit, drug unit, and so that we can have a better coverage of the city based on going forward, because we do look at changing, not continuously doing what we've been doing, but even changing how we can be more efficient and effective moving forward.
So you said that number was 214?
That's my authorized strength of sworn personnel, sir.
Okay. And how close are we to that now? How short is that number? From my patrolman ranks all the way up, I'm up to my captain ranks, I would say. We have 175 sworn, and my biggest at the corporal and entry level. I just promoted several officers from patrolman to corporal, so that allows me to have more patrolman positions available. I do have some unfilled corporal ranks, and at my supervisory rank,
I have just 3 or 4 vacancies, but at patrolman and corporal ranks is where the majority of my vacancies are.
That's all my question.
Yes. Chief Person, I just want to say, you know, whoever gets this position, and I'm just speculating, Commissioner Howard's concern might be that we got another major when we need, more folks, inspecting properties and bringing, condemnation actions. But this needs to be somebody who's not promoted based on his or her tenure with the police department. I think this is a special person, whether it's a lieutenant, a major, whatever rank it might be. This person needs to be willing to get out there on the front line. If this is a blighted property, has been identified as a priority by this commission, and I think the person who is selected for this job needs to be committed to that vision, and not just somebody who's got the most seniority and the next person to be a major. And I understand you recognize the importance of it, but I would like to have somebody who once a quarter, he or she can come into a city commission meeting and tell us where we're moving with these dilapidated properties, what have been identified, what owners have been engaged and afforded the opportunity to renovate and or restore their properties. Some of our agencies, I think, sometimes don't have the true buy-in and commitment that is necessary. And obviously, if we have somebody who's not committed, I think that's going to kind of impact everybody else in that division. But having said that, I also, whoever has this job in code enforcement, we need his or her accomplishments and that department's accomplishments can be evaluated objectively. And that's going to be by the number of homes that are under of dilapidated structures which are demolished, and or the number of properties that can be rehabbed. I just want us to monitor this as it goes on. Having said that, this is a good presentation. I particularly like the summary and about the community-oriented policing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I fully understand, and we will, like I said, this may not be a sworn person. It could be a non-sworn person that we find with the skill set we need and for this position. Yes, sir.
One thing, we had talked about this before. I'm pretty sure I requested it, Ms. Subadan, and I know things have gone sideways with this coronavirus, but it brings to mind, I thought I requested that we have maps of each 6 wards and designate the properties that are dilapidated in each of those 6 wards. So is there been any progress made on that, or am I mistaken? Did I not ask for that? Or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mayor. We have those, the maps and the information, but with the current virus, I can get it to everyone now, but that was the only holdup before we presented it, was based on the current situation. But we do have all the information that you requested.
Yes, Commissioner Young's telling me he's already received it, and if I have received it, I apologize. But if it could be sent to me again, I mean,
you may have received a digital copy, sir, because we did send it out, but we also have handmade maps that are pretty large.
If we could get those, but
yes, sir.
Are you talking about those huge maps?
Yes, sir. These are about 3-foot size maps for each commissioner and you.
Okay. I appreciate it. I'm sorry if it's been provided. I certainly didn't, if it's been emailed to me, I didn't, access it, and I apologize for that, but I look forward to receiving the maps, and I think that'll give us an idea of the magnitude of this, challenge. With that,
Yes, sir.
thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir, you're welcome.
Madam Clerk, the next item.
That is the city manager's update.
I will be emailing the update to you as now has become customary. And we don't really have a whole lot new to report on the courts. When we have something new on that, we will email it to you also. And Mayor, I believe we did provide hard copies of those maps, and if not, we'll try to track down what happened to your version of it. But we did have those maps produced and distributed.
Well, I apologize, and maybe the map was emailed to me. Commissioner Young is saying he received the map, so maybe I'm mistaken, but if it was, I've not seen it, and if I could, but okay. Items for the next agenda, Commissioner Howard?
No agenda, no item.
Commissioner Fuller?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yeah, I had one item, I guess, on the topic of code enforcement. It appears most times I've talked with Nathan, we always start talking about demolition. One of the things I believe is starting to, now that we've gotten very aggressive on demolition, is now what are we going to do with the properties? So Land Bank only handles properties where taxes aren't being paid, but what's going to happen, and is already happening, is we're going to start accumulating properties with lots of liens. And as long as the property owner pays their tax, those liens will just be there for perpetuity until they get ready to sell it. So what happens, as for instance, we may have a piece of property that we may spend, and these are just round numbers, we may spend $25,000 to demo a piece of property, but now it's only worth $5,000. So what do we do with that? The individual is never going to be able to sell it because it's got that lien. So what Nathan and I were talking about is, and I guess this is the future item, is maybe if Nathan can bring us how many of these properties are out there potentially where the lien is so much higher than the value of the property. And then we need to start talking through how are we going to dispose of these. And so it may be where we might agree to, we'll get 25 cents on the dollar to dispose of these properties, to get them in the hands of somebody who's going to clean them, take care of them, maybe the neighbor, somebody in the neighborhood, some investor of some sort. But I think that's something, even with what we just discussed, that we're going to be spending almost $1 million next year, is how do we recoup some of that investment we're making? We're not going to recoup dollar for dollar. Maybe we need to have a policy or something where these things come about that if we can offload a property to somebody that doesn't fall into the land bank, that this is a whole nother animal, that maybe Nathan can bring something to us next meeting or two on how we deal with that going forward.
Can I ask that be part of our overall strategy on code as we go into the new budget year? It just seems to me like the two things are so closely connected that rather than just having you can have Nathan do whatever you want, but it just seems to me that this should be part of an overall strategy as it relates to blight.
I agree with you. It is a big elephant we're going to have to eat. I would just say if Nathan were to have one or two properties, maybe 3 or 4, that we could take action on immediately, or maybe he doesn't have any, but if he has some that needs some immediate attention, maybe we would afford him that opportunity to bring something to us now while we figure out how we're going to eat the whole elephant. Like you said, later on, that's fine.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing from me.
Commissioner Young?
I just wanted to mention that some of the emails that I've sent talked about the stimulus money that's coming directly to municipalities, that we begin to, I know it's maybe not a lot of money in terms of what our overall budget is, but I think we need to be prudent with the money that we have to make the biggest impact on our community, which we all know was hit harder than most of the United States, in terms of the devastation that we've seen. I've been on a couple of these calls with the White House, and they're very informative, a lot more informative than some of the press conferences. But we do have resources out there. We do have this money coming, and we need to be in tune to what we'll have to help our citizens recover from this. This is going to be a long haul. I don't think it's going to be anything that we're going to be over and done with anytime soon, but we need to be thinking about where the money that's coming in from the federal government will do us the best good to help our community recover. That's it.
Well, I certainly can't direct any commissioner to do anything, but I would just ask Commissioner Young to continue to stay on top of this. I sent y'all a letter a few days ago. I was unaware of it until I was on a conference call that funding in the CARES Act, unrestricted funding for cities was limited to only municipalities of 500,000 or more. And there are a lot of things we need to know about this legislation as it goes forward. And if Commissioner Young continue to monitor that and maybe educate us as this thing goes along. But we've all been receiving letters from GMA and other organizations encouraging us to contact our congressmen and the state senators the United States senators to express the concerns of cities like ourselves. Don't make that 500,000 threshold. I would like, Ms. Subadan, we got the information on the East Broad sidewalk, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you
I sent that out.
email that to us?
I did.
Okay, I just won't see that as an agenda item. I want to go ahead and move on it. That is for me, that is a priority, and we'll discuss it. The one thing, I don't know if this is the city clerk's responsibility or the public information office, but I have not seen on the public access channel, I had asked that we publish a notice that the commission was considering renaming Carver Park to Driscoll Park. Has that been placed on the public access channel?
Honestly, Mayor, I really don't know where we are with it. There is a process. There's an ordinance that was passed on how you do it. A committee has to be formed of the commissioner for that area, and there's various other pieces. In the scheme of everything, unfortunately, it's really not on my radar screen.
Well, I mean, we got to keep running the city, and I understand it might not be a priority, but let's get that notice out there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you understand there's a process.
No.
It's not just a matter of noticing it. I believe a committee has to be formed by the commissioner. And Sonia, if you can help me with this, you know the process better than I. I don't think we can just advertise it. I think we have to follow a process that's previously been approved. But I'm not ignoring it. We will, after this call, I will get on and make sure that we get the committee established and follow the process.
Okay,
and we are continuing to move the city forward, sir.
I think we actually had talked about that last meeting with Commissioner Fletcher, that park is in her ward.
Okay, well, I guess what we can do is on the, next agenda, we'll just have an explanation of if it's an ordinance or, whatever the policy is. But my point, Ms. Lubedan, was, I just wanted the public to know that it was under consideration so that if anybody had any, objection or wanted to express support for it, that they could. That's not, inconsistent with following this policy, whatever it may be. And the last thing, I had asked months ago, for whatever information had been generated, and I know we're talking about 2003, 2004, but it's HOK, did some design work out for Eames Park, and, staff couldn't find it. But what I would like is that for staff to contact HOK and get whatever, documents were generated. I remember we paid them about $150,000. I would think the design documents are our property, but if somebody in recreation could do that, I'd appreciate it.
I think, if that's still on the line, I believe we had asked them to reach out. The company, I believe, has a different name.
Populous,
So-
Populous.
Right. Yvette, did anybody reach out to Populous and get anywhere with it?
I am not sure if they have or not. I will get back on that to make sure that you have that information.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, excuse me.
Can I ask Mr. Mayor one question? Ms. Lubedan,
Yes, sir.
are you gonna see Mr. Scott Tennyson today?
Am I going to see him? No. Do you need something from Scott?
Oh, just let him know that I certainly appreciate him. I was like a hawk watching a rabbit, that when he decided last year to take on the demolition of 1113, 1115 Crawford Drive, as of last month, those two structures had been demolished, and I just want to commend Scott for following through with me on that.
All right, we will definitely pass that along. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Lubedan?
Can I bring up one thing?
Oh, Mr. Davis.
A motion would be made to excuse Commissioner Fletcher from the meeting for personal reasons.
I was gonna make that motion in the meeting, in the actual meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Lubedan, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, well, with that, the meeting will be adjourned. And, can we now convene the regular meeting?
I'm ready.
Begin by observing a moment of silence. Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Madam Clerk?
The first item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Is that an opposed? Or any opposition? I guess it's unanimous, okay. First item,
Before the committee of the whole is variable speed pump station from Denison Construction Company out of kitchen joint total expenditure of $237,500.
Ms.
Approved.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Just real quick, was there any local company that did on this?
Ms. Fields?
Actually, the local company is Jerry Pate, and he is included in this bid document, in the bid that was submitted. So he will be doing part of the work.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Ward one?
Yes.
Two?
Yes.
Ward two? Three?
Yes.
Okay, 4?
Four?
Yes.
5?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Madam Clerk, the next,
We have one ordinance, and, if this is approved, Mayor, the ordinance would actually, the motion would be, I offer the ordinance and ask for its approval instead of the standard language that we use. Since
Okay.
This is the second reading. So this is, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending code section 2-41, providing for meetings, and it is the second reading.
okay.
I offer the ordinance and ask for the approval, consent to second reading,
And you can do it.
its adoption. Second.
Any discussion? There being no discussion, can we have a roll call vote? Madam Clerk?
Ward one?
Yes.
2?
No.
2? 3, is that? 4?
Yes.
5?
No.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay. Before we move to the, so that is passed, and as I understand it, from now on, I mean, we'll be meeting on the first and third Tuesday mornings, and for a work session, regular meeting on the fourth Tuesday of the month.
Starting in May.
Yeah, starting in May. There's issues been brought to my attention. Commissioner Fuller, do you want to make a motion regarding, Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. We use Commissioner Fletcher from the meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Could we have a roll call vote?
Ward one?
Yes.
2?
Yes.
3, is absent. 4?
Yes.
5?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Next item, last item, it appears to be a resolution. Madam Clerk?
That is a resolution establishing a temporary 60-day moratorium on abatement and demolition of residential houses in the historic district.
Okay.
Offer resolution and ask for its adoption.
Have a second? I'll second the motion. Okay, second. Was that Commissioner Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Ward one?
Yes.
2?
Yes.
Is absent. 4?
Yes.
5?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Any items for the next agenda? Beginning with Commissioner Young,
No, sir.
Commissioner Langstaff,
No.
Commissioner Worthington,
No.
Commissioner Fuller,
No, sir.
Commissioner Pro Tem.
No comment.
Okay. With that, the meeting will be adjourned. Thank you.
That went all right, didn't it?